Hello, everybody, and welcome to our wrap-up episode. This is Greebs here from One Last Try, joined with Bino and Cook. We are fresh off the completion of Resident Evil VII Biohazard. We've just defeated the final boss, and now we're here to talk about the game a little bit, give our highlights, our lowlights, and our recommendations, and maybe also discuss some things that did or did not work, or things that did or did not get resolved. And we're going to start off just really doing a quick recap
Hold
of
on
exactly what was.
one second. We should warn that there will be obviously spoilers in this, so if you want to watch our
Spoiler,
previous
spoiler, spoiler,
videos,
spoiler.
spoiler alert, you should go back
Good
and watch
call.
our videos. It's actually pretty entertaining, so make sure to like, subscribe, notification bell, all the usual stuff, but watch the videos most importantly. I think you'll have a
Yes,
good time with
yes.
it.
If you have
Thank you.
not played the game and are avoiding spoilers, please fast forward or just straight up go back and watch our other videos and then come back to this review video.
Yep.
Thank you for the
Sorry,
reminder.
groups.
Definitely, spoilers are ahead. Thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, so the game is basically taking place from the eyes, for the most part, of the main character named Ethan. He is called to Louisiana Bayou to find his wife, who has been gone for some time. Um, Very beginning of the game, he gets attacked by her. He actually loses his hand, which gets reattached. And then we find ourselves around the table with this family who's basically eating human pieces, like entrails and intestines and stuff like that. Those are the bakers. And essentially, the game is us trying to survive and avoiding the bakers and then eventually fighting them. And we go through a stage of running away from the dad, Jack, and then we go through a stage of the insect mom, and then the third stage, which is Lucas, who's sort of the wily kid who's trying to set up puzzles and traps and stuff for us. And at the very end, we have to go against Evelyn, who is the main boss. We later find out that Evelyn is a bioweapon that Mia, the person we came here to look for, was actually caretaking for as part of a secret organization transporting her to, I guess, someplace. And that's really the very quick and dirty recap. But we don't really want to talk about the recap too much because that's sort of what we did the walkthrough for. Um, so now that we've gone over that, what things worked? What did you guys like about this game? Let's start with what didn't get resolved. So we talked about the story. There are certain elements we talked about them a little bit during the credit sequence about some unknowns. I think the big one that we touched on was what happened to Lucas. We did not face Lucas as a boss in his sort of sequence in the game. Instead, Jack came back.
The very next
So what
day.
happened? What happened to Lucas? Bino was reading a synopsis during the credits, which said that Lucas apparently gets healed,
Yeah,
and he starts talking to Redfield. But that was I kind of missed that during the game. Did you guys catch that during the game?
If it was there, it was presented in a manner that didn't highlight its significance because I don't recall having learned of Lucas's fate, other than the mention that the military. I don't even know if you can call it the military if it was Umbrella Corporation, but the people that we assumed to be the military were in talks with Lucas, but that's about it. We have no idea whether or not the game told us explicitly what the heck happened to Lucas.
wasn't there some sequence or event that happened right before we went into the salt mine where they were talking about, like, we heard the radio broadcast of the military and they
Yeah,
said, did they just say he's in there or she's? I can't remember what they said.
It said he's in there, and that's what made me think that they knew that we, as Ethan, were in there.
Right.
one of the
Because
things that. Sorry, go ahead.
I feel like Lucas was through there though, because he must have set those traps for somebody, right? So maybe they were talking about him. I don't know.
Yeah, there
That
were
is
some
weird.
sort of communications with Lucas and the military. Now, one of the things that threw me tying into this was the timelines. I got very confused by the timelines. It wasn't really clear how long. I think maybe if I watched the first episode, I would be reminded. I don't know, but it wasn't really clear to me how long Mia was gone. It wasn't clear what point in time the cameramen had come to the house, what time the boat, what year the boat had arrived. I mean, you could probably piece that all together, but through a normal playthrough, it didn't stick out for me. So when we saw emails at the very end of the game from Lucas in 2015, I didn't know if that happened before or after he was infected and all that. So I was definitely confused by that. But I mean, I think it's a minor point, but it's just something to bring up.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track of something like that. Like, would you be expected to keep your own personal notes while you play through the game, or should the game do that for you? If there was some way to, like, you know how in some RPGs you'll have a log or a journal that'll keep track or let you go back and recall all of the documentation that you found. It would be nice if you could have done that in this game.
I think in general it's hard to keep track of game stories because of the amount of gameplay that happens in between. This is like probably like a greater conversation, but I feel like for me, part of the reason why, I mean, game stories in general to me aren't really generally that good, but I feel like even the good ones, it's hard to keep track of what's going on because there's so many breaks in gameplay where you're trying to focus on something else that you just kind of, at least I forget what actually happens during the story.
I was going to say, I was just trying not to pee my pants, and I wasn't even successful at that, so
yeah,
I can't keep track of dates.
It's a tough part.
But I mean, I think, like I said, I think those are minor. I mean, like you said, Cook, that's almost like a bigger issue. I mean, you're also dealing with, in this case, a 9-hour story whereas with a movie, you're working with a 2-hour story, or a TV show. It does take place over a longer period of time, but I feel like you just have a lot more opportunity to develop that information and keep track of it. So
yeah, and you're just focusing on that too. You're not having to focus on what's the best like weapon to use in this situation. What weapon should I be keeping track of? Like doing the Tetris thing with your inventory and all that stuff. There's just so many gameplay elements that really take away like that cognitive power that you need to track a story too.
Yeah, speaking of things that didn't work, I think as a backseat viewer of this game, my biggest gripe with this game would be the inventory system. Seemed very clunky to me, and
imagine doing it as the actual player of the game.
Yeah, you get under pressure, and it becomes even more hard to deal with. And I think that's definitely something that prevented me from giving this game a better score. Now, I don't know if that's part of the charm of a Resident Evil game. Cook, I know you've played more of these than me.
Yeah.
Is that a typical Resident Evil inventory experience?
Yeah, it is. This is I think something that's always come up in when people talk about like survival horror games, which Resident Evil it started off as survival horror, but it kind of seemed like evolved more to like action oriented. But yeah, inventory management is supposed to be a big thing about it, and it's, I think, like you said, part of its charm. I think I've always had problems with it because I don't like it. I think the managing inventory, I'm like never a person that likes when you have to basically think about weight in your inventory, and like those mechanics really annoy me, and I just hate having to do that. So this stuff bothers me too when you have to deal with that. But I think it's expectations for Resident Evil. Like if I came into a Resident Evil game and you didn't have to do that, then I would be shocked. I think that's like part of it that is pure Resident Evil.
I'm going to throw out there that I'm completely fine with the idea of having to manage your inventory. I mean, there are lots of different items, and the save points come frequently enough with those rooms where you can access your case. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bina, were you referring more to the interface of managing your inventory, or referring to the idea of having to juggle items?
Yeah, the interface of having to manage it, like watching you struggle with dragging items around and click on this, then click on that, then click on this to combine these three things. It really seemed clunky.
Yes.
I completely agree that in a survival game and in a horror style game, you do want to feel like every decision is an important one. But the frustration levels of not being able to do what you want while in the inventory, I think, is more of where my problem with it lay.
I wonder...
Go ahead.
Sorry, I wonder if playing with the controller makes it different, because Resident Evil is another game where it was designed for console and built on console, and the PC version It was just obviously like a port. So I wonder if it actually would
Mm,
be easier to control that stuff with a controller.
And we saw that. We
But I
saw
don't
that
know.
with some of the icons interfaces that they had. It was using a D-pad instead,
Yeah.
yep.
where I mean, I was using 1, 2, 3, 4, but I had to remember that it was 1 was left, 2 was up, 3 I think was right, and 4 was down. But
Yeah.
I mean, I sometimes I would switch between the two, trying to find which one it was. Um, Certainly in terms of moving around items within the inventory, there were times where I could drag, and there were times where even if I dragged, it didn't work because it was highlighted slightly the wrong way, and so I had to click on it again to unhighlight it, and then I could drag it. It was, and then the fact that I couldn't drag from the crate to my inventory, I had to click once and then click on those little arrows as necessary. I mean, having come off games like Valheim, or I also was playing previous to that 7 Days to Die, sort of games where you're also managing your inventory a lot, but it was just so smooth transferring things between a crate and my own backpack. This definitely. But
Yep.
I'm not here to do this, and I'm not doing it as often. Now, there was only one sequence I think where I needed to very quickly make a change, and that was at the very end in that last episode, where all of a sudden I needed to switch over to get my bombs
Bombs.
when those
Yep.
guys were chasing me, and that was tense because it's not easy. You gotta hit tab and then try to move things around to it's one of the number buttons on the keyboard. But I mean, luckily for the most part, I was able to avoid that. But it was certainly some challenges on that regard.
Yep.
I would be interested to try that part with a controller. I feel like the aiming is just so much better with mouse and keyboard that it probably at least makes that part
Yes.
better. That I would not want to play that with controller.
Yeah, imagine what my aim would be like with a controller. Oof.
Mm.
Yeah. Things and
Um,
nightmares.
Another thing we have in our notes about what didn't get resolved about when do we decide how people died for good in the game in terms of bosses and when they didn't, because Jack came back after I think he should have been dead that first time, but he came back and Marguerite didn't. How did she die in a way that kept her dead and Jack didn't? I don't know what well, the game definitely doesn't explain that. It's just a thing, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting. When theoretically Jack came back, he died first time in the garage
Yeah.
when he burned to death after the car explosion. Then he came back and we fought him in the bathroom. He chased you around the bathtub, and we didn't kill him there.
No,
We
we
kind of
just
just
stopped
escaped
him.
him. Then we killed him
The chainsaw
after
sequence.
in the
Sorry.
with the chainsaw. He had the chainsaw scissors down in the preparation room, and then he came back as like his ultimate form when we had to use the serum on him. So yeah, why did he get all that special treatment when really Marguerite was one and done,
Yeah,
or was she?
how did we kill Marguerite? I can't remember. Was that just when she
So
was like in the
She
rafters
was
and
this spider lady, yeah, in the rafters, and then
that's
we
right.
we burned her, but I don't know how we burned her differently than
yeah.
Jack.
Yeah, she might have just come in. Oh no, because she fell down that hole originally. We killed her, and she fell down that hole and turned like to liquid, and completely disappeared, and then came back as the spider lady. So she
Right.
got two deaths.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
Yep. And then Lucas was never a boss. And
So I'm gonna jump on that one story real quick. So
yeah.
there were phases in this game. There was the very first phase, which was uh, the Jack phase, where you're basically running from this guy who's chasing you with an axe, and I think that was so well done. Like it was a really good lead in. The second phase was where you're going out to this home by the water and all these bugs, and that was well done. It was very different.
Mm-hmm.
And so it created a different experience in gameplay. You had to really use the flamethrower. There were bugs everywhere, constantly bothering you. And then the third phase was
The
again really
puzzle
well done. It
phase.
was the puzzle phase, and I really liked it. And we mentioned it during the episodes. I can't highlight enough how good that second second doing of the escape room was
Yep.
conceptually, where you had to figure out how to solve this escape room that the previous person that you watched in the video was not able to solve, and that was awesome. But then at the very end of the third phase, instead of the boss of the third phase sort of matching the phase, which is what had happened before, it was this reincarnation of Jack. So I think I would have enjoyed it a little bit more had it been. I mean, I don't know how do you do a puzzle boss. Like that's sort of what I felt Lucas deserved, and it would have also removed the questions of, hey, what happened to Lucas?
Yep.
I mean, Zoe could have called the military just as well as Lucas had, or Mia, or I mean, she was part of that organization. Was she part of Umbrella? Do we know that? What was she part of?
Hard to say. I don't know if it was clear.
Anyway, so that was my sort of concern. Like it was the phases I thought were really well done because they were tailored to sort of the person that we were chasing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It just really threw me off with the Lucas part because I felt that boss should have been a little bit more tailored to what happened before. And then actually it kind of goes to what Cook mentioned about it turning more into this actiony kind of game after that. And then of course the fourth phase was where we were chasing Evelyn, which again was done well because there was this creepy little girl who every so often would show up just in the distance, kind of out of reach, almost kind of running across the screen. Like, did I see that or did I not? But anyway, I liked
Yeah,
the four phases. It was well done. It was a good mix.
I agree with you on this Lucas thing because he had captured the two girls, and that was like, I mean, after we got them unlocked, he just disappeared and we didn't really hear from him again. Really, it was very odd.
It was very much odd, and I'm really interested to see if he makes a reappearance in Resident Evil 8.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
got
Did they keep him alive for a reason?
yeah. I gotta say, I think I would be all over a game that if they had like multiple levels of those escape rooms built in this engine and everything. I think that would be fucking awesome to play through
Yeah.
just more stages of that.
Yep. Except ones
Uh,
where we don't have to witness someone being burned alive.
Yeah, without
so
that.
that the game definitely had some gruesome elements to it. Was it too much? I don't know. I don't think so. I mean, there was that one scene I remember where the spider lady basically attacked us and ripped our groin right off with her teeth. That was brutal. There was them eating the intestines. There was the hand chopping off. Um, Side note, just remember the very first episode we lost our foot,
Yeah,
and then we were able to pick it up, and if we had just done it right, we would have been able to continue playing the game. That would have been interesting too. But I mean, it's obviously not a game made for kids. I had no problem with the gore factor. I think it's kind of ties into to what we're witnessing with this crazy family in the bayou.
nothing like those meat doors in the medium.
Mhm.
Do you still dream about those, Cook? I feel like you might.
Yeah, no, it's. I don't want to think about it anymore. It's brutal.
The last note that we have here for what didn't get resolved, the discussion between Jack and Ethan. There's a flashback between Jack and Ethan. Um, what what purpose was that?
I think that was just to show that they weren't in
The
control of
Bakers weren't
anything.
the enemies.
Yeah,
Okay, so there was a side to them that was because I mean, if you recall, in the very first episode, Mia talked about the family feeding her and sort of keeping her going and stuff like that. So I'm guessing that might have been earlier on when things weren't quite as bad, and they probably just evolved as time
why
progressed.
would
And
they
have,
lock her up though? That's the thing. To me, I wasn't sure if that was actually a flashback because that seemed weird because that would have been like the only human part that we saw from any of those bakers, and it was just in a flashback at the end of the game. I feel like how Mia kept flipping back and forth between the two. I would have expected that to happen with the bakers if this was like a flashback. But that's why to me it felt like more it was when he was like being, I guess, held or was in that cocoon. Then maybe that's where they were able to communicate because they were dead or something. I don't know. It felt weird to me.
Yeah. It was unusual, and it came at an unusual time.
Yeah. Felt like it was just kind of thrown in there. And same with Zoe too. I
yes,
felt like Zoe is just kind of there to give you hints throughout the game, and her character is like nothing. After like she gives you hints, tells you where to go. She tells you that she's like their daughter, and then she wants the serum, and then after you don't give it to her, she's just like, okay, you suck, bye. That's like her
yeah. I
character
mean,
arc.
if you were Zoe, would you not be like, okay, I'm taking this back. I'm gonna kill you just to get this serum?
I don't know. She told Ethan or told you to use that serum on Jack, which I feel like
Mm-hmm.
might not have been necessary, but I mean, it was part of the story to make it so you had some sort of choice to make. But then her character just like it just seemed like so useless ultimately.
Yeah,
I don't
which
know.
again ties to what we talked about that decision point between Mia and Zoe. Like, why?
Yeah.
Because there was no connection, because all she was a voice on the other end of the phone.
Why would anybody actually save her?
Yeah.
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 It's weird.
So those are the things that didn't work. Which, I mean, we talked a lot about things that didn't work, but I feel they're very minor in the overall picture of this game. Things that really worked. What did you guys really like about this game?
Cook, you go
I
first.
Hiccups.
I thought it was really fun to watch. I think pacing was good. There wasn't really any slow moments for me, at least. I think there was a lot of good action, and then when action wasn't happening, we're trying to solve puzzles or trying to find something that didn't really seem to take too long. I think we got stuck like once or twice, but it wasn't too bad in my opinion. And you were very thorough in searching for things, but even that didn't really bother me. Usually it would because I don't like doing that. But like to me, it
Is
was
that
just
right? Why
like it
is
was
that?
fine. I don't know.
You
I
just
get
want to.
bored. I want to move on
Well,
to the next thing that happens. To me, like the gameplay part is more fun and sort of the exploration part. And it's just like my personal preference. Nothing against like what you're doing at all, but it's just like not the way that I play normally. But like I said, it didn't really bother me. It was like there was enough action and enough scares, enough the atmosphere was great. Everything around the story worked really well for me. And even the story itself wasn't bad. Like there were holes that we poked into it, but I still feel like it was entertaining. The twist was really good with the grandma being Evelyn. I loved how Bino picked up on that. I thought just like generally the characters were really good. Jack was awesome. Like the accents. Lucas was a really good character too, even though we didn't get to explore him too much. Marguerite was scary as all hell, and like I just thought the characters were great for the most part. The ones that they invested time in. I thought the watching the gameplay was fun. Shooting looked pretty fun. Overall, I think it was just like really good game to watch.
It absolutely was a great game to watch. And to your point about the pacing, you're right. That it was one thing after the next. You get out of one area and you're out of the frying pan and into the fire with every step of the way, and that to me made it very exciting to watch. To the point where when it came time to wrap our episodes up, I was finding myself saying I could play a little bit more, or let's just see what happens next, because it was super gripping, and I felt this story was leagues better than the Medium's story
Yeah,
was. Less holes in the plot. It was explained better. The voice acting in this, I know we made a comment of it while we were doing one of the episodes. Actually, it was right in when we got into Lucas's area that I said, "Man, the voice actors are fantastic in this game,"
yeah,
and they really are. The only parts that I felt were kind of tedious were the moments where Greaves was dealing with the inventory, shuffling stuff around, prepping this, prepping that, making medicine kits, and that's the part where I feel like had the game allowed an easier inventory management, there would have been less of that downtime. But for the most part, this was a very fantastic story, and the multiple phases that Greaves mentioned was really neat. It kind of gave you three different games within a game. I really loved Lucas's puzzles, and yeah, that escape room sequence was, I think, my favorite part of the game.
yeah.
yeah, no,
Agreed.
I gonna basically echo a little bit of both of you. The reveal with the grandmother. I mean, especially since we focused on her a lot in those little times where we did see her. We'd be like, "What's this crazy lady doing here? Why is she following us? Why is she always looking at us?" Like it just added this really creepy element of unknown
Mm-hmm.
of this old lady. Like she's so feeble, right? And she's just there all of a sudden out of the blue. And so I mean, to reveal that little kid that we've been following occasionally and seeing little glimpses of was this person that, oh wait, this whole game we kind of saw her. That was really cool. I really like that. And then To Bino's point, it's interesting that he mentioned about. Sorry, it's interesting that you mentioned that that this story was better than the mediums because if I recall correctly, we were praising the medium for its story because the gameplay wasn't as
Engaging.
what's the word I'm looking for? Engaging. There you go. That's a really good word. Um, and so for this game to surpass the medium story, we mentioned it during the filming that this is a third sort of game we're playing the walkthrough of, and the first one was the medium, which had a good strong story but wasn't engaging gameplay, and then we had Hitman, which the storyline was very confusing, but who cares because it was all about the engaging gameplay.
Yeah.
This
Yep.
one just found a really happy spot for
Yep.
both of them in that it's not like it was the average. It was average for both. It was strong in both of them. The
Yep.
gameplay, I thought the controls were very tight. I was very happy with the way that it would go, and like the speed was good. The running, like I didn't really want to run too much in the game, but the pace of the walking was good. The aiming and controlling was good. Um, I was always worried because Cook always talked about the lack of ammunition and stuff like that. And there were a lot of times where we were getting pretty close. We had to be conservative. There was a couple of guys we had to knife, even though because we had no ammunition left. So I mean, I know it's tedious to look around for little inventory pieces, but with my aim, we definitely needed it. But it was front to beginning to end. It was a lot of fun. And yes, at the end of every session, I kind of really wanted to keep going. And the other thing I was thinking of while you were speaking, Bino, was that those safe rooms, because there was action sort of constantly, and you never knew where things would pop out of. Those safe rooms really felt safe. Like it was like a, phew, I can actually stop and breathe for a minute, and that's where it was fine to be a little bit tedious on the inventory because you know there's nothing jumping out at you. Whereas because this is one of those games where just because you've explored a certain area, when you're going back, there might be something new there, even though you've already been through there. You never knew what to expect. So I
Yep.
really liked the way that happened. So it added an extra element of relief when you hit those safe rooms.
Yeah, and now speaking of the safe rooms, I think this is a good segue into one of the things I learned regarding replayability. And so at the end of the game, we unlocked a higher difficulty level called Madhouse, which, when I was reading up on what that gave you, enemies move faster, the
Ooh.
items are scattered in different locations, the ammunition is more sparse, and the other catch, you're going to love this, you'll notice what mechanism did you use to actually save the game?
Auto
Like a tape
saves
recorder?
or tape recorder.
The tape recorder. In Madhouse mode, you have to find cassettes
Oh my
Oh!
to
god.
use to save the game.
That is good. That is.
I couldn't imagine getting to a safe room after a long sequence like the Marguerite fight and then not having a cassette tape to save your game
That's
would
how
be terrifying to me.
I think that's how the first Resident Evil worked. I think you needed tape ribbons to be able to save them in the typewriters, from what I remember.
I kind of recall that.
So I think that's
Yeah.
a good throwback.
Yeah. So speaking of replayability, the other thing to mention regarding that too is the inclusion of collectibles. I thought that the coins were a neat thing to have. They kind of didn't make sense from a storyline perspective why there would be coins and things to unlock in the game. Why wouldn't Zoe just give that shit to you if it was really meant to help you out? So that to me felt like something that they added strictly for the purposes of forcing people to replay the game. And then the inclusions of those bobbleheads really didn't add anything to the story. I don't know. I think I mentioned it when you were playing was why the heck are these vending machines in here? Because it kind of took us away from the story. It didn't add to it. Would you guys agree on that?
I would, for sure.
Yep, I agree. I had no
And
issues
remember
with
that
it,
one
though,
time
but
we
yeah.
used the lockpick and found a coin in there, and we were all like, "Oh, just a stupid
Yeah.
coin!" Like,
Yep.
but I mean, it's they're collectibles, and you're exactly right. They're just there for the replayability, getting that achievement when you get all of them, unlocking the Magnum. But
Are you guys the
uh,
type that would want to go back and find everything?
Not in this
no,
game.
no,
So it depends on the game for you, Bino?
It absolutely depends on the game for me.
Okay.
Trying to look back on the games that I've replayed. Um, I'm a big role playing guy, and I have played through the Dragon Age games multiple times. I've played through Mass
Wow.
Effect multiple times, and every time I play them, I'll do things that I didn't do in the previous runs, simply as my way of experiencing as much of the game as possible. And I don't know if I would take that same level of enjoyment. The story's not going to change when you replay this game on a higher difficulty.
right.
Um, it's not going to unlock a different ending for you, with the exception of the Zoe and Mia choice. And to me, that kills all my motivation to come back and replay a game like this.
Got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Echo. All right. What? Before we go to our ratings, there was one last thing I wanted to mention, which you just touched on, but darn if I can remember what it was. Um. Anyway, I can't recall. So let's let's jump to our ratings. We have a scale out of 5. Why I think I'm going to give this one a 4 out of 5. There were some small issues. They were all very minor, but all in all, this was a very entertaining game. I'm happy I got to play it. I enjoyed it thoroughly, start to finish, and for what it was, 9 hours of scares and action and inventory management. Sign me up.
Awesome. I also give the game a 4 out of 5. If the inventory had been easier to manage, I likely would have given it a higher score, maybe a 4.5 out of 5. Um, I don't know what was preventing it from being a 5 out of 5, other than the fact that maybe it's just not really my type of game. But that didn't stop it from being an immensely enjoyable experience to watch you play through this one.
Nice. I'm giving this a 4.5 out of 5. I have a big soft spot in my heart for Resident Evil games. I think the first Resident Evil is like one of the first games I played on the PlayStation 1. And then Resident Evil 2 is like an all-time classic for me. I don't know if you guys played that game, but I love the way that the stories interweave. So you would play as two characters, but they would have like overlapping paths where you would be able to interact with each other. And I love that like innovation of it. I played 3 a little bit. 4 was great because it changed the way that the game was. It was more action oriented. I think I played 5, probably with you, Greaves, and that was co-op, so that was kind of cool. 6 I skipped. And then 7, this one was awesome to me because I think the first person perspective really changed a lot of how you play the game and like how frightening and horror it can be. So I think that really added a lot to it. The puzzles still stayed Resident Evil, which is like one of the classic Resident Evil things that I love. Just the dumb puzzles, like finding like there's this ornate door in this like old house that these people are living in. Like, why do they have that? Like, that had no
Yeah.
reason to be there, but it's just hilarious that it's there. You have to go find what like the grandfather clock, whatever this pendulum to put it in there to
Pendulum.
unlock something.
Yep.
Like, all those puzzle parts are really, really fun to me. I love that stuff, but it's just like nonsensical within the actual game universe because it makes no sense that it's there, but it's just so pure Resident Evil that I love it.
Yeah, especially
seeing-
those little silhouette images that we saw. Like,
Yeah,
what is
yeah.
those?
Yeah, why did they have that in their house? But it's
cares?
great.
That's fun.
I love that stuff. I love the weapons you find, like the grenade launchers, like a classic Resident Evil thing too. Like all that stuff, everything hit like for me in that Resident Evil nostalgia, and then it also just had a really good story, really good characters. The gameplay looked cool, and like I was saying, like it was not slow paced. It was fun to watch and excellent. So 4.5, stand by it. I think you guys should raise your score, but I will let you leave it as 4s if you want.
So I'm still on the fence. I'm not sure if I'm doing half marks or not. And for a 5 out of 5, it's really gotta
Yeah.
really gotta get me. But I'm happy with my 4 out of 5 rating. That's don't take that as a hit. That's a very positive Greaves review right there. So
Yep.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this game thoroughly. I enjoyed this discussion thoroughly. I think it's a great game, and we are very close to Resident Evil 8 coming out, and One Last Try is going to be there. We're going to start releasing episodes as soon as we can to launch day, and Cook's going to get behind the wheel and jump into some more Resident Evil nostalgia. So we look forward to having you join us. Please like and subscribe down below to keep track of it when episodes do release. You can find us on Twitter with @OneLastTry Games. Is it?
One Last Try Plays, I think.
One Last Try Plays. But otherwise, thanks very much. That was a great discussion, a great game.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you
job.
very much.
Good job, Greaves.
Next time.
Thanks.
See ya.